Hey there everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So we are back, better and ready to tackle the question, which privacy laws apply to your business? Running a business is tough enough without worrying about getting tangled up in legal jargon. But we are not entrepreneurs. This video will break down the key privacy aspects you need to know, all in plain words. Before we dive in, hit the subscribe button and smash that notification bell so you never miss a beat. And if you feel like you might have seen this video before, it's true, you might have. But we are rebooting all of our content to make it even better, so don't skip. Now, let's clear up that privacy confusion. So, imagine a world map, but instead of continents, it's colored by data privacy regulations. Some regions, like the European Union with its General Data Protection Regulation, known as GDPR, have very comprehensive laws. Others might have specific industry regulations or be in the early stages of the development of legal framework. Thankfully, there are numbers of resources available to help us navigate this complex landscape, and here's on the slide you can see a map of privacy laws across the globe. Whenever a new one is passed, it is added to the map as well, so it's super convenient. And that's all good, but the question remains, how do you know which ones to follow? Let me explain it in the next slide. So, you might be wondering, shall my business follow all these global privacy laws? Remember, rule number 1, don't panic. The good news is that you likely don't need to comply with every single privacy law out there. Why? Well, privacy laws are typically designed to protect citizens within a specific region. So, the laws that apply to your business will depend on where you operate and where your customers are located. We'll delve deeper into the next to help you identify the rules that actually apply to your business in the next slide. Okay, so we know now, not all global privacy laws apply to your business. But how do we figure out which ones do? That's where understanding territorial scope and material scope comes in. There are two main criteria that most privacy laws use to determine applicability. Think of them as filters that help us narrow down the relevant regulations for your business. Territorial scope focuses on geography. Does your business operate in that region where the law applies? For example, the GDPR primarily applies to companies processing the data of individuals in the European Union, regardless of the company's location. Material scope focuses on the nature of your activities. Does your business process a certain type of data, or does it offer specific services that trigger the law's requirements? For instance, the CCPA applies to businesses that collect the personal information of Californian residents, exceeding a threshold criteria. But also remember, how these criteria are interpreted can differ between some laws, and some may have stricter thresholds than others. Now, let's look at their example. Let's dive deeper into the concept of threshold criteria using the Californian Consumer Privacy Act as an example. This thresholds act as benchmark to determine if your business falls under the CCPA's regulations. The CCPA applies to a business if any of these following criteria are met. A business has annual gross revenue exceeding $25 million in the preceding calendar year. This means if your business made more than $25 million in the previous year, you'd likely need to comply with the CCPA. Your business buys, sells, or shares the personal information of 100,000 or more consumers or households. Here, focus on the sheer volume of data you handle. If you regularly collect and share personal information from a large number of Californians, the CCPA might apply. Your business derives 50% or more of its annual revenue from selling or sharing consumers' personal information, This applies to businesses whose core business model revolves around selling or sharing customers' data. If data sales are a significant portion of your income, CCPA compliance is likely necessary. By evaluating your business against these CCPA thresholds, you can get a clearer picture of whether you need to comply with the law. You can also follow a simpler approach to explore other major privacy laws and their applicability criteria. And now we are ready to talk about each criterion in detail. Now that we've tackled thresholds, let's shift gears and explore territorial scope. This concept helps us determine if a law applies based on your business geographic reach. We'll use the GDPR as an example. Basically, the GDPR uses two sub-criteria within its territorial scope. The first one is establishment criterion, which focuses on the physical location of your company's establishment. You should ask yourself, where is the company officially registered? The country of registration can be a strong indicator of your establishment location. The second one is targeting criterion. That looks at whether your business activities target individuals in the European Union. So, do you offer goods or services directly to people in the EU? This includes things like having a website accessible in the EU or marketing campaigns targeting European customers. Or maybe you monitor behavior of individuals in the EU. This could involve tracking website visits from the EU users or using analytics tools that collect data on European residents. So what? Well, if your company has an establishment within the EU or targets individuals in the European Union through offering goods or services or behavior monitoring, then you'll likely need to comply with the GDPR. By evaluating your business against both the establishment and targeting criteria, you can get a clearer picture of whether the GDPR applies and whether it works with some other laws as well. Now, let's move on to the next point of importance. I'm going to give you some examples so you can understand all the details better. Let's imagine a scenario to illustrate the concept of stable arrangements within the GDPR's territorial scope. Imagine a Chinese-owned e-commerce website operated by a company based in China. Their data processing typically happens entirely in China. However, to expand their reach, they established a European office in Berlin. This office's primary function is to manage marketing campaigns significantly targeting EU users. Here we have the establishment factor. The Berlin office, despite not being the main company headquarters, qualifies as a stable arrangement under the GDPR. This means it is considered an establishment in the EU. Why? Because it has a lasting and continuous presence specifically dedicated to serving the European market. And what of it? Due to the presence of this EU establishment, the GDPR applies to the entire company, even though the core processing occurs in China. This is because the Berlin office acts as an extension of the company's activities within the EU. Your key takeaway here should be the fact that the GDPR doesn't solely focus on a company's physical location. The existence of a stable arrangement like the Berlin office establishes a foothold in the EU, triggering the GDPR compliance for the entire organization's data processing activities. And now, let's talk about targeting. And I'm back with another example. Let's see how the targeting criterion of the GDPR applies. Imagine a Turkish company specializing in cultural package tours in the Middle East. They offer tours with guides speaking English, French, and Spanish. Here's where it gets interesting. Their website is accessible in all 3 languages, potentially attracting European customers. In addition, the website allows online booking and payments in euros and pound sterling, currencies commonly used in the EU and UK. So, of course, by offering tours in European languages or a multi-language website and payment options catering to EU currencies, the company is clearly targeting individuals in the EU. This indicates they are engaging activities that fall within the scope of the GDPR. And the result is that, due to their targeting efforts towards EU residents, the GDPR likely applies to the Turkish companies. This means they'll need to comply with the regulations requirements for collection, storing, and using customers' data within the European Union. I hope it becomes clearer now that you've seen an example. We are not done with targeting, so let's crack on. We've explored some key aspects of the GDPR's targeting criteria. Now let's delve into some additional factors that can come into play, often working together to determine applicability. I will also mention that these criteria are not standalone triggers. They supplement each other, and the presence of multiple factors strengthens the case for the GDPR applicability. So what should your additional considerations? First, targeted marketing and advertising. Ask yourself, have you launched marketing campaigns specifically aimed at reaching an audience in the EU? This includes things like targeted social media ads, regional websites versions, or email marketing campaigns focusing on EU countries. Next is EU-specific goods and services. Do you explicitly mention the EU or individual member states in your offerings? For instance, do your product descriptions highlight features that comply with the EU regulations or mention availability for delivery within the EU? Another one is international scope of activity. Certain inherently international activities like tourism can trigger the GDPR applicability. If you cater to EU tourists, or maybe you offer delivery of goods or services directly to customers within the EU member states, this demonstrates a clear targeting effort towards the European markets as well. Finally, imagine a company offering language courses with a website translated into multiple European languages. They also run targeted ads on social media platforms in the EU and offer delivery of course materials to EU member states. In this scenario, the combined presence of several targeting criteria significantly strengthening their argument for GDPR compliance. They are not all, so let me mention 3 more in the next slide. Here are some more elements that, when combined, can paint a clear picture of a company's intentions. You should also consider the top-level domain. Basically, ask yourself, does your website use a country-specific domain level? This can be a clear indication of a targeting specific EU market. Even using a neutral top-level domain like EU suggests an intention to reach European customers. Next question for you is your website available in languages commonly spoken within the EU, even if it's not your company's native language? This suggests a deliberate effort to attract European customers. Also, does your website offer pricing or payment options in euros or other EU member states' currencies? This caters to customers within the EU and strengthens the argument for GDPR applicability. So, thank you for being with me until the end of this video. I really hope now you know more about applicability of privacy laws. Remember, navigating these complex privacy laws can be tricky, but by understanding factors like website language, currency options, and targeted advertising, you can give valuable insights onto your GDPR obligations. Do you want to stay on top of the latest privacy trends? Then hit the subscribe button and smash the notification bell. I'll keep you updated on all things privacy laws so you can stay confident in your business practices.